I represent the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party.
Thanks. Tara?
My name is Tara Sutton. I can't turn my camera on right now, but I am a representative of the impacted families from the fuel spill.
Thank you. And then Ilima?
Sorry, my mic wasn't working. What large member?
Hi, Ilima. So we could see you and we could kind of sort of hear you, but the sound was very intermittent. So I don't know if there's something you can do for your mic or maybe speak closer to the microphone next time.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry for that. I have a fan right behind. Sorry about that.
Ah, okay. No worries. Can hear you now. Cool, cool, cool. Melody?
Oh, I'm sorry. I walked away for a moment.
No
This is
worries.
Melody Aduha, and I also, I guess, I'm Meredith of the CRI, but I was a former representative of the Environmental Caucus.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. And as we're getting through some of our technical difficulties, I think there's, is it true you guys can't see video right now on a level?
Yes.
Okay. All
Yes,
right.
that is
So,
true. We cannot see any shared screen.
okay. All right. We will figure out how to get that fixed. Thanks.
It's fixed.
And then, so we next on our agenda are some announcements. So I'll go through the announcements and hopefully we can get the video issue taken care of in that time. All right. So, Rosalie, are you able to share screen?
Yes, give me 1 second. Is this for the agenda or is this for the QR code?
For the QR code, yes, please. Thank you. Sorry, I know you're doing a lot right now, so. So the first announcement is that we do have a vacancy. As Melody said, she has stepped off of the CRI. She represents the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. And so we now have a vacancy for an organization. If you're interested in becoming a member of the CRI, we would be happy to have you. There's a QR code on the screen, or you can go to the CRI website and you can learn more about the open position and what it takes to fulfill one of these seats, and then also submit your actual application. Application deadline is July 31st. And if you have any questions, you can always email us. Next, we have an announcement about the community engagement sessions. I'm not sure who's making the announcement. Tara?
Can I make my announcement in just a couple minutes?
Yeah, sure. The next announcement is that tomorrow, Friday, there are several public meetings that people should be interested in. One, the Department of Health has a series they've been doing on groundwater. And so the last one in the series is tomorrow. And we have that information available on our website. And also, that's going to be midday. And then also the Board of Land Natural Resources will be hearing testimony on whether to accept or reject the Army's final environmental impact statement for the use of state-managed lands in Hawaii. There's about 6,000 acres of state lands that the military leased long ago, and those leases are coming due. And this EIS analyzes options for and the consequences of different options of the Navy staying in Hawaii or the Army staying in Hawaii or leaving. So that'll be at 9 a.m. At the Board of Land Natural Resources building, which is on the corner of Punch Bowl and Beretania Street. And for the NASUM community engagement sessions.
I can speak on that too.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm able to now. The NASUM, or the National Academy of Science and Engineering, and I forget the M, but they are actually here on island, and they are continuing with their research into Red Hill. Liz Boyle is the project manager on that, and she was wanting to come tonight and give kind of a high level update as far as what their project is looking like at this point, but she's double booked. So she actually asked me if I could just share with everybody that they were able to actually visit the site at Red Hill. They also visited the White PE Tunnel. They held 2 engagement sessions yesterday, which were attended by about 40 people, 17 in the afternoon session and 23 last night in the evening session. And now they are in a closed meeting that is just focused on discussing their report and their write-up. And that actually is where she's at now. It was supposed to end early, but they're just going late. So she was unable to come. Speaking as a participant, I can say that they are absolutely so beautifully organized. The event, being a local, not local, but being a impacted resident from the water line, this is um, it's difficult to talk about so frequently in all of the different sessions. It's like re-traumatizing sometimes, depending on which part of my exposure experience I'm addressing. But NASEM has really taken a soft and gentle approach and made people very safe to share. And the stories that are coming out are very impactful. And yesterday, as we closed up, they, listed a number of things that they had never heard before and are able to take into consideration. Yeah, I think that's all for me. I don't know if Heilani is here. She was also there, and we sat at different tables because they broke us all up as to like, how were you a part of the Red Hill community? So nonprofit organizations were represented, medical tables were represented, all of that. So I was in the affected families table.
Yes, I'm here, Tara. Yes, so I was on the advocacy table. I was happy to see so many experts. There were physicians, researchers, and people with the expertise to really look at the impact that the Red Hill spill has had on the families. One of the things I was really happy about as a Kanaka Maoli Native Hawaiian was their partnership with Dr. Kiave Aimoku, Kamei Moku, sorry, I think that's his last name. He's with the University of Hawaii Medical School, and he was working with them closely. And I'm really happy about that because part of the problem with researching the impacts of the Red Hill spill on residents is the disparity between those that were served and were and I wouldn't say they were their issues were addressed adequately, but there's a huge population that were also poisoned that no one's talking about, and that's the Pacific Island Native Hawaiian population. So that is something that Dr. Kiave is looking into, and they're going to be including that as well as including the history of colonialism into their report, hopefully. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the meat of our agenda. First up is a status check on the cleanup and the shutdown of the Red Hill fuel tanks. And Rosalie's queuing up your slides.
Thank you so much. There's not much to update in terms of, well, we'll get into it. Okay. So you can go to the next slide. I just wanted to share this this part of our Kumulipo, which is the origin chant of the Native Hawaiian people, the Kanaka Maoli people. It is 1,500 lines long, and it's very ancient, and it talks about the birth of all living things. And in this section, in this portion, it talks about la'i. So it says, Hanau la'i he wahine, hanau ki'i he kane, hanau kane he akua, hanau o kanaloa, o ka he'e hauna e wela ia hanau ka pahu o moana liha. And moana liha in my interpretation of this cosmogonic genealogy, is the birth of our aquifer. La'i being the first woman, Ki'i being the first man born in our Hawaiian cosmology. So I just wanted to kind of share how important our aquifer is in our Hawaiian genealogy and in our Hawaiian ways of knowing. Next slide. The cultural significance, just want to just go over this a little bit. And I want to just kind of share this excerpt from Kawaya Kane. He ui aku ana au ya oi, ai hea Kawaya Kane, aya I lalo, I ka honua, I ka waihu, I ka waikau, a kane me kanaloa, he vai puna, he vai e inu, he vai e mana, he vai e ola no ea. And it means in the exceptional water of Kane and Kanaloa, the two gods in charge of the Vai and the Kai, a water spring, a water to drink, a water of spirit, a water of health, sustaining life. This is also an old chant, and it talks about the water cycle, but it also talks about the sacredness. And water is sacred. Also, water is life. Ola I ka wai. In the Hawaiian way of thinking, water is the source of life. And I think in the human way, I mean, we all have to drink water, right? And I just want to point to like some of the place names in Hawaii that have the word vai, which means water in Hawaiian. Waikane, Waikapu, Waimea, Waiakea, Waiehu. All of these places, when you ride around the islands, just keep that in mind that was Vai was so important that they put in the name, and it was the ability of that land to support life and to support people living there. And without Vai, we don't have a future here on these islands. The next one. So Kapukaki, a little history on that, is located in the Ahupua'a of Moanalua. Nama Kahelu, the famous chanter of Moanalua, also used the term Lena Kauhane in describing Kapukaki. So according to her, Kapukaki, where the tanks are, was a jumping off point for spirits to enter the realm of their ancestors. It was awarded in the 1850s to Kekuanaoa and Kamaiku'i. Kekuanaoa was the governor of Oahu at the time, and Kamaiku'i was the Hanai mother of Queen Emma. So just a little history of Kapukaki, aka Red Hill. Next slide. So the Moanalua Waimalu Aquifer was the principal drinking water source for Oahu, providing 20% of Oahu's water. This aquifer has provided water for life on this island since time immemorial. So the Board of Water Supply Halava Well helped serve 400,000 residents from Halava to Maunalua. So the Maunalua Waimalu Aquifer is currently not in full use due to the contamination of the Red Hill Fuel Storage Facility. Next slide. The U.S. Navy Red Hill Fuel Facility has 25-story tall tanks were built in the early 1940s in Kapukaki. Each tank can hold 250 million gallons of fuel. These tanks were built 100 feet above the Moanalua Aquifer, within a mile of the Board of Water Supply Halava shaft. Tank walls were, when they were new, 1/4 inch thick and have been actively corroding for decades. Before November, approximately 644,000 to 1 million gallons of fuel was released throughout the facility's history. That was just recently found out in 2023 with the VAI report. Next slide. What happened at Red Hill on November 2021, 20,000 gallons of jet fuel, JP5, leaked into the environment and the drinking water. The Red Hill shaft was contaminated and then shut down on November 28th, 2021. This impacted the drinking water supply for over 90,000 residents. Next slide. How we got here. So in November 2021, after the Red Hill spill, the Oahu Water Protectors organized and galvanized the community to demand the permanent and immediate shutdown of Red Hill. Thousands of community members demanded that the U.S. military shut down the Red Hill facility. In 2022, March, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd J. Austin, directs the Department of Defense to defuel and permanently shut down the Navy bulk fuel storage facility at Red Hill. In 2022, September, the Joint Task Force Red Hill is established and is responsible for the initial defueling of the facility and begins with the process of removing 104 million gallons of fuel via gravity. That was done in about a year. And then in 2023, October, the Red Hill Community Representation Initiative was formed in October of 2023. And that was about the same time they started really defueling, because it took a while for them to come up with the plan. And in 2024 of March, the Navy Closure Task Force, Red Hill, was assumed responsibility of the facility and started degassing in October of 2024. Next slide. What is happening now? So only tanks 7 and 8 have been cleaned and cleared of sludge. Only tanks 3, 4, 5, and 6 are in the process of getting ready to be cleaned, which to me really speaks to the fact that they had to do a lot of repairs before they could even start cleaning. It was probably riddled with holes, and that's my informed opinion. The U.S. Navy is trying to reopen 2 poisoned wells, the Navy Aiea Halava and the Red Hill Shaft. They have gotten preliminary approval from the Department of Health. The Navy Closure Task Force, Red Hill, has submitted its detailed plan to close the Red Hill facility in place. And that is supplemental number 4. And from my understanding, that plan also includes the removal of some pipes, but they will close in place. Next one. We haven't seen the plan yet. It will be released in July after the EPA and the Department of Health look at it. The VI report. The Red Hill Water Alliance Initiative, a coalition of state and city leaders, released a final report on November 28, 2023. They convened and then released a report addressing the Red Hill water contamination crisis. This report emphasized the necessity for a comprehensive strategy to remediate the contaminated site, monitor the ecosystem, and provide ongoing support to those exposed to harmful chemicals. Then on June 6, 2025, just this month, House Bill 505, aka the VI bill, was signed into law, Act 197. This took 2 years to pass, but this addresses the long-term remediation of the land and the water on Oahu as a result of the Red Hill spill. Next and last slide. Online resources. So here are some online resources that you can go to get information. Of course, we have the Red Hill CRI website that you can go to. If you want to stay engaged, you can follow Oahu Water Protectors on Instagram, Facebook, and on X. The Board of Water Supply has really good information on their website as well on Red Hill. The Sierra Club Hawaii is a really good resource for those that are younger and wanting to learn more about the culture. Kanaio Kana Vaihona is also a good website. And of course, please go to the Navy Closure Task Force Red Hill website. All of the information that I shared about the updates is regarding the tanks being cleaned and the closure is on their website. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helani. Does anybody have any questions or follow-up? Okay, well, I look forward to the staff for
ask?
the Y Authority to be put in place. Do we have any information about um, the next opportunity for the public to engage with the Y Authority?
No, but I believe they're moving pretty fast
Okay.
with getting staff in place for the VI Authority, which will be office within the Board of Land and Natural Resources. I'm excited about it because this is because it's going to be what Ernie says, it's the marathon, not the race, right? Not the sprint.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure that the water and the land is cleaned. And we're hoping, crossing my fingers, that they get somebody really good to be the VI coordinator, which will be a key position to receive monies, to make sure that we get test results posted, and we'll have to see through the whole process of cleaning up the water and the land.
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I see a question on the screen. Tara?
Yes. Hey, Alani, you mentioned, I forget the name of it, but something that is preliminarily approved and they're drafting something up and it won't be released publicly until DOH signs off. My question is, do you know if there's a period where the CRI is involved with it before it's, like as it's sent to DOH or anything before it's finalized?
No, I don't think so. We don't have any information on that. We just have they did make some general statements about what the supplemental report says, which is basically they're going to preserve in place because they felt that it was the most timely way to shut it down. And they will have to replace some of the pipelines, but not all. And they didn't want to disturb or cause more damage to the environment. What will happen to the tanks has been a big question, and they said they are undecided in the supplemental report on what will happen to the tanks, but it will have to be something that is discussed later on. So people have all kinds of ideas on what to do with those tanks, right? And so that should be an interesting discussion, and hopefully the community will get a say on that. Thank you.
I just want to add, especially in terms of the two aquifers that were closed as a result of the Red Hill spills, the Navy is going through a conditional approval process, right? So they got the initial go-ahead to start trying to treat this water and look and see if it has any contaminants in it. And once the Department of Health is satisfied with those preliminary tests, then they will open it up. And I just wanted to say that I don't think we need to wait for an invitation to get involved in that. I think this is our water. I am very concerned about the process and the quality of the water and the consequences of opening this shaft for the people who are on the water line and people who are not. Like it's all the same aquifer. We're all pulling from the same glass of water. So I think we should figure out different ways that we can make our voices heard with the Department of Health so that they know that this is a big deal. I mean, we could, as a CRI, we could write a letter and ask to hold a public meeting on this particular question,
That was my thinking too, because in the AOC, the CRI is written in as a seat at the table for decisions and discussions. And so it makes sense that even if they don't release it to the full public, we as representing specific portions of the community, that the CRI should have a seat in that conversation. So I was just curious what's that looking like?
It's looking like what we make it up to look like. So I think we should definitely press for involvement in that decision making. Yeah. Go ahead. Wait, it's off now. Yeah.
I'm having trouble with the mic today. Anyway, I would suggest that we dedicate a chunk of time at one of our, public meetings here where we can have folks come with testimony with said ideas, reach out to those people who have those ideas and have them have a seat at the table so that we can relay those messages when we have the seat at the exclusive table.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to the extent that we're involved and, the fact transparency and public involvement has been a cornerstone of the way the CRI is operated. I think if I would push for it to be open, at least for the public to watch and monitor, if not actually participate. So, all right, any other questions, conversation about the status update? Thank you very much for that well-researched book report, Helene. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Robert Duwars. He is a neuropsychologist. He provides, he's in private practice, and he provides comprehensive neuropsychology services, testing, diagnosis. He even serves as an expert witness, which is to say he's super smart. And he's been working with Red Hill families from, near the beginning of this particular crisis. And he's here today to share with us some of what he is seeing on the ground. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Wars.
Thank you all for the invitation. So I sometimes work with homeless people, and I had come back to Hawaii 20 years ago. I had gone from island to island evaluating neuro-AIDS patients to assess how active the virus was in their brains. And then in coming back here to do some work with homeless folks to try to understand the diagnoses and perhaps develop treatment plans to help improve the quality of their lives and treatment opportunities. Folks with whom I was meeting who were clinicians were themselves contaminated by the Red Hill experience, and they started referring themselves to me. So all told, I've evaluated about 40 people, which isn't a lot, but it was a lot at the time of what was available. And it actually impressed Dr. O, because when he saw my data, he accepted them as genuine, and he encouraged me to do some research on a larger scale. The complexity for the Red Hill folks is that oftentimes there's more than one toxin that's involved. So most of the research on toxin exposure has to do with a single element. Sadly, the concern and the idea is that multiple toxin exposure is going to cause even worse effects over time. So the hope is that people will be able to be monitored and in some kind of a registry in which their biological profiles can be maintained, because we don't know what combination of toxin exposures or what combination of signs. A sign is something that can be measured by testing. It's not something that a person complains of. A symptom is something that a person complains of. So the notion is to identify what anomalies there are in neuropsychological test findings, and then to follow the interrelatedness between those anomalies over time to see what they might predict as far as the pathogenesis of some possible medical condition that might percolate over time. So that's kind of the ongoing concern right now. So my findings, I did a 2-year fellowship with the world expert, Elkanon Goldberg, on executive functioning. So that was very fortuitous that I had that training and expertise when I started meeting with the Red Hill folk. So there were anomalies in what's called higher ordered executive functioning, being able to do abstract thinking clearly. Certainly there were difficulties with multitasking. Profound difficulties in high energy, focused, creative thought is kind of a hallmark characteristic. Also, something called working memory, which is very much like random access memory in a computer. That is historically very low in these folks. And of course, people have brain fog, and I'll get back to that in just a second. And of course, people have trauma. The trauma of not knowing what's going on, the trauma of a sense of being lied to, the trauma of being betrayed by the military the trauma of their families being put at risk. These are all very real things that oftentimes weren't recognized. What for me was pathetic was that when I first met Red Hill survivors, they were grateful that I believed them. They were grateful that I wasn't discounting their symptom clusters. I was like, holy God, what kind of thing is going on here? Pretty astonishing. So there are two platforms that we use to deal with the after effects of inflammatory diseases. We use something called CogMed, which is also good for attentional issues, and we use something called Captain's Log. I consult at an AIDS orphanage in Nairobi, and we're using CogMed, Captain's Log in Nairobi for the kids with HIV/AIDS. Their parents had AIDS and died, and then the kids are living in AIDS orphanage. And we can make those available to the Red Hill community as well. So we do testing that looks at attention and concentration and various kinds of memory. Impulse control is also something that's very much impacted by the contamination process. We do left and right hemisphere functioning, prefrontal functioning. We're very comprehensive in our assessments. We do the same test battery to look at questions of sanity or mitigating circumstances in criminal cases as well. So we really cover the waterfront, which is what one wants to have done to establish a baseline, to perhaps look longitudinally at what's going on for folks to be able to track that. So when I was first here about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, some of the major providers were saying, we don't know what to do with our data. We don't know how to make sense of it. So Dr. O encouraged me to attach myself to a medically focused large group to go for grant money through TERP, which is the DoD organization, because he thought that the data that we had acquired was so relevant and of such importance to the military that we ought to build upon it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, looking at continuing to gather data, continuing to provide relevant testing measures that can be used by primary care physicians and others, and to help look at ways to help improve the quality of people's lives through the platforms that we're using now that can help ameliorate some of the neurocognitive functionings that people have.
Dr. Baum,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I would like to switch things up a little bit.
Please.
Would you mind switching seats with me so that the people on Zoom can see you and you can talk to them directly?
I might break their cameras. but
No, you're handsome. It'll be great.
thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, great, thanks.
In terms of questions from the audience, so people on Zoom have been texting us some questions. And so one question I wanted to see are, what are some of the things that you are seeing in the community that stand out as impacts that are related to the Red Hill poison water exposure?
Higher ordered executive functioning, which is the ability to manipulate data.
It's lit.
Okay. Higher ordered executive functioning, which is the ability to manipulate data and to use it in a constructive way. Organizational skills, the ability to organize and sustain activities designed towards achieving goals. That's kind of the general definition of executive functioning. Things that require the capacity for intensive, sustained neurocognitive functioning
So like
is
concentrating.
diminished. Concentration is part of it, yes.
Okay.
But to keep material in people's minds and to be able to process it and to respond to it. So the good news is that there have been at least 2 platforms that we know of that are well researched and in the literature that we have access to that we're using that are having some good results.
Hmm.
So it's not a permanent condition that needs to happen. The concern is that it's important to understand what one's biochemical footprint is, or the signs in the neuropsychological profile, to see if that's going to turn into something that will be of consequence later. David Carpenter, who's at the University of Albany, he came out here with me metaphorically, and we met with some of the Red Hill folks early on. He's an interesting character. He went to Harvard on a full scholarship undergraduate, then he went to Harvard Medical School, and then he graduated from Harvard Medical School and he never practiced medicine. he went into toxic exposure right away, and that's what he's done all his life. He's at the University of Albany. So he talked, since we're talking story, or I'm talking story.
Yeah.
So his expertise was in toxin exposure, PCBs in particular, but also jet fuel related toxin exposure. So there wasn't any literature on multiple toxin exposures anywhere. So he wrote a couple of papers and he became the world expert on multiple toxin exposures. He did well more than a couple of papers, but it shows what one person or one group of people can do when there's a need and they recognize the need and they work collaboratively together to meet that need. So he's available for consultation. And again, Dr. O was very encouraging to look at continuing to gather data, as are a number of the larger Red Hill providers here in Oahu that are willing to collaborate and to see what the data seem to mean and to see what treatment intervention works best for what symptom of cluster of symptoms. So
Okay.
there's a lot that's available, kind of percolating under the surface, that hopefully people will become more and more aware of. And so it's not, I know you folks, I don't want to characterize, but sometimes feel like you're banging your head into brick walls.
Yes, all the time.
But within your own group, there are options that are available that could help ameliorate things for sure, that are more available now than might seem obvious.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, go ahead, Mai.
Question. So how do you differentiate? Because I know a lot of families out there with young children who, let's say, would go to the doctor, and the doctor, military affiliated doctors, I know, I saw that. I agree, would say, oh, but this child already had autism or ADHD beforehand, but yet symptoms got worse after exposure. What would you say to those parents who are getting mixed messages from the doctors who are saying, no, that's from prior diagnoses, not current exposure?
Right. So any kind of toxin exposure is going to worsen, is going to exacerbate a pre-existing condition. So again, I'm not a lawyer, but I spend a lot of time in court pretending to be. So the notion is that if something gets more broken than it was in the beginning, you're responsible for what the condition is at that point in time. So the sad joke that Dr. O and I spoke about was that with the Navy had been explaining that everything was factitious, everything was in people's heads, they were complaining about. And when Dr. O saw my data, which I did present, Harvard has an annual psychiatry day. So I'm an instructor of psychiatry at Harvard in my spare time. So we presented that at Harvard Medical School. And what those data showed was that neuropsychologically, that literally the sequelae, the after effects of the toxin exposure was in people's head from what the toxin had done to their brain functioning. So the sad joke was the Navy was right. It was in people's heads, but the Navy was discounting the fact that they had caused what was going on in the people's heads. They weren't making it up because they had anxiety disorders.
So, yeah, it's a good joke. It's a great joke, yeah. It's in your head,
That was a Navy joke.
but it's also actually real. Nice.
It literally is in your head.
Some other questions. One of the audience members would like to hear your thoughts on the difference between adults and children and the potential long-term impacts or reversibility of those impacts that you're seeing.
So this is a simple way to understand it, but sometimes simple is better. So I look at all of this stuff in one form or another as an inflammatory condition, and things that help reduce the inflammatory condition can be very helpful for all of these situations. I'm realizing I'm not teaching a class, so I'll try to be succinct. There's a concept called neuroplasticity.
Okay.
It was developed by Alexander Luria in World War II during the Battle of Stalingrad. And he noticed that the brain regions that were shot out by German snipers of Russian soldiers, those functions could be acquired by nearby brain regions, which was incredibly amazing at the time, that something that didn't work on that particular capacity could assume some of that capacity. So that concept of neuroplasticity, which is also useful as a treatment intervention for autism, high-functioning autism kids, the idea is that certain kinds of repetitious activities, like neurocognitive platforms, like I've begun to talk about already, can actually cause or enhance the functioning of damaged neuronal pathways or circuits, to put it more simply, and that this is a way that people can get better. So in autism treatment, and I'm hearing there's an increased level of autism, but I don't know that from my own experience with Red Hill kids. The idea is that if they're in social skills groups, now these are not like learn how to play, take your chance and go in the right sequence. But if people learn the pragmatic aspects of speech, this is the buzz phrase that I put into all my evaluations. If people learn the nonverbal aspects of speech, they learn about body language, they learn about tone of voice, they learn about facial expressions, that causes very focused changes in neuronal pathways. That was developed at the University of California in San Diego. In fact, on my way over here, my Lyft driver told me, I've got an autistic kid, and I gave him my card, and I went through this whole spiel, so I had the chance to practice what I'm saying right now on my way over here. So, but that's all tied in with the idea of getting the brain to regenerate different capacities and actually to enhance neuronal pathways. And the fellow that taught me about executive function, Alexander Luria, Alkanon Goldberg, ran Luria's clinic in Moscow for a very long time, and I did a 2-year fellowship with him in Manhattan, not in Moscow.
Dr. DeWars, if there are people who need that kind of treatment that you just described, do you have any suggestions or how they could follow up? Like, what is the next step for them to be able to seek treatment?
So I've got some really, thanks for the question, I've got some really good quality staff here in Honolulu on Kapiolani Boulevard. We do very much work remotely. I'm licensed here in Hawaii. We do very robust and comprehensive neuropsych testing. I've got a colleague, Scott Porter, who has particular expertise in assessing very early children, particularly with very concerning and serious neurocognitive deficits.
Okay, so people can Google Scott Porter
Or me.
or Robert DeWars, and
Yeah.
it's DUWORS.
Right.
Okay,
And we're both
all right.
PhDs, and I've got a Hawaii phone number. I should probably give that 808-292-7001. That's 292-7001. And I've got 2 email addresses. The easy one is my last name, then my first name at Gmail. So DUWORS, Robert@gmail.com. And I'll try, I'm probably running out of time. But the way the software works is it enhances the functioning of different brain regions, i.e. it helps strengthen the circuits that underline those different capacities. And there's a concept of ecological validity. So the technician will then look at the changes that are being done through the computer work, because we get a record of that, as does the patient. And then we adapt to their daily life the increased abilities that have been evolving based on the computer work. So it works very nicely. And again, this is all very researched.
Thank you. If anyone have any other questions, I have one more, and we should move.
Yeah, I had a question. So when I was at the National Academies last night, I think one of the things I brought up to them, and I'll bring up to you, is what I've been hearing from the U.S. military is that you can't make the connection, right? You can't make the connection between the Red Hill family's illnesses and the fact that they were poisoned. So there's no connection. So what would you say to that? What would be your response?
This is probably a family show, so I can't really say.
No swear words. There's a swear jar around the corner just for me.
So
Take a moment.
from an epidemiological perspective, one can simply, in quotes, say, well, there's this much stuff that's not typical for a given population in this population that has been exposed to toxins. So that's a fraudulent excuse to say. So correlation and cause is not directly related. So because there's a huge amount of extra bad stuff, doesn't necessarily say that's totally what caused it, but it's a good place to start. And I'm trying to be diplomatic. I'm not usually. So when I was at that same meeting yesterday, I sat on the expert table, but the government, the experts did not know that there were tests that could look at the poisons that people have experienced through the Red Hill. Because that was kind of the cliche. Well, there's no test to look for this. There's no test for this. Karen Johnson on the Big Island, Dr. Zunin at Integrative Care, I think Dr. Miskovich, whatever the name of his thing is, they all have tests that can show that certain elevations are related to certain neurocognitive dysfunction. And there's a direct correlation between what those test results are showing.
Cool. Thank you very much. I had one last follow-up kind of along those lines. The Navy has said in the past that it's stress, it's all in your head and you're stressed out. Do you have a comment or a response to that position?
So I've been to like a lot of schools. So I also did the 2-year fellowship at Mass General of Harvard Medical School in psychoanalytic therapy.
Okay.
So trauma, particularly childhood trauma, but is very pronounced for causing depression, anxiety, and all sorts of other anomalous kinds of things. So a former mentor of mine, Judith Herman, she of course is a Harvard psychiatrist, but she wrote the classical and pathetically sad book, Father, Daughter, Incest, about the worst kind of betrayal and trust that you could ever imagine. So I would compare that level of betrayal as to what the active duty military experienced. These guys or women willing to die for the country, and then the Navy purposely concealed to them for their own benefit the fact that this was what was going on to these people's families, never mind to themselves. And I can't say how I know this, but I know that the Navy is being criminally investigated by the federal government.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm so glad I asked that question. What a mic drop, Bob. Jeez.
We are having a changeover, right?
I forgot to say that.
I
Good
know,
job.
I've heard through the grapevine that Admiral Barnett is leaving. And so we're having like a change of command in Hawaii.
Okay, so the federal government is investigating the Navy for their criminally for their wow. That's huge. Thank you very much for sharing that. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Oh, I see that Tara's hand's up. Sorry, I was engrossed.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Tara. I see Jamie over there too. Hi, Jamie.
Yes,
Aloha.
my family loves Bob. We
They're
do.
very smart. It's a very wise family. Thank you,
So
Tara.
I know that you're not a toxicologist, so I hope that I'm not asking a question that puts you on the spot to speak outside of your expertise. But what I do remember about the refusal to do tests in the beginning of our exposure period was they said that, like, what I was hearing was more that, yes, there are tests to detect whether this is in your system, but the test can't prove where your exposure came from. For example, you could have been exposed while you were pumping gas at the gas station, or maybe you work around airplanes and are exposed to that fuel. So they didn't want tests because the tests would have shown the exposure, but then there's a presumption that it came from Red Hill. And so, in my opinion, that was crazy because a child doesn't work around airplanes and is usually in the car if you're pumping gas. So like it just blew my mind. And especially like there is a flat line, like baseline for the regular population, and then the baseline for Red Hill survivors of all ages may have looked differently, and that would have been worth investigating in the beginning. But I just wanted to bring that up with you. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, this is a family show.
Yeah.
So I think that very much of what people heard in the beginning, someone said yesterday at the table I was at, talked about how the Navy had their own Red Hill clinic, but it was only open 4 hours a week.
Yes.
And nobody trusted it. There were 93,000 people, and nobody trusted what they said anyway.
Yes.
I have it on very good report that the Navy is being criminally investigated. I would be betraying a confidence if I said I might even get charged with something.
Don't do that. You're too loved.
Thanks. But the nefariousness of what they did, the dishonesty of what they did, the self-serving damage of what they did. So, so trauma does profound. It's gut-wrenching. It almost destroys a person's sense of self, their sense of who to trust, how to trust. There are very powerful needs for different kinds of intervention. I won't get into how I know all that stuff, but I know all that stuff. So I think the more, I know Dr. Tanaka, I know Jason is his first name. He does TMS kinds of stuff. Kiefer. They have data that they're willing to share. Dr. Johnson on the Big Island has data that she's willing and able to share. She's had great success with her detox model. Dr. Zunin has had great success with his detox model. But people have been, I have to be careful, people have at times felt that they were targets of not only the Navy, but the Department of Health. So there have been very many levels of complexity.
Yes, it is extremely complex. It is.
So again, we're willing and able to do robust testing. We do IEP recommendations for kids with stuff. we do things for disabilities for people. We usually get disability approved based on the thoroughness of our evaluation. So we try to help.
Thank you.
I have a question. What
Yes.
should we be asking for from the Navy? I mean, they keep saying, what do you want? We want clean water, but like, what should we be asking for in terms of what they should be addressing as the entity that poisoned 93,000 residents?
They should have the database that Dr. O encouraged me to create. So I've been going around to the Harvard School of Public Health to try to get them interested. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So they should create the database for longitudinal studies of what they created, which is what Dr. Owen encouraged me to do, which is why I've spent hours talking with the people at the Harvard School of Public Health to try to see if they would be interested in collaborating on research in this area with me here. But that's a lot of frequent flyer miles. Too many at my age.
All right, thank you. We have a few other questions. Okay, so Michelle, and then Jamie, and then Tara. And just noting the time, it's after 6.
So would that look like federal funding to go directly into the budget for your research?
Well, TERP, T-E-R-P, is a part of the Department of Defense, and Dr. O spoke very highly of them in that. But I would be happy to talk off camera. But the settlement or the conclusion of the court case left many variables out that weren't considered that ought to have been considered. So there's absolutely no question that there are going to be long-term medical effects, at least for some people. So making available to people the newest and best interventions that are discovered or developed along the way to help influence the course of what they might well be developing is only fair.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Jamie? You're still muted.
Great smile, Jamie.
Rosalie, could you see about trying to unmute
There we
Jamie?
go. We got
Thank
it. She
you.
got it.
Good job.
Aloha, Dr. Doors. Aloha,
Aloha,
CRI.
Jamie.
I just wanted to bring it back a little bit to what Tara brought up, and then also what you brought up about one of your partners being able to test children young with the families, because we do know that, we had families there that women were pregnant and children were exposed in utero. Can you speak, if at all possible, to some of the exposure that can happen in utero, and then what some of the early signs are, and how early can children be tested, the little ones?
Yeah, so some people, there are tests available to people like myself that can test as young as 2 months. Dr. Porter does that. Dr. Porter does that kind of testing regularly. I spend a lot of time in court, not because I get caught often, but
Not for that reason.
so I tend to deal with the more acute. I deal with HIV/AIDS kids and infants in Africa. So I kind of cover the waterfront as well, but some people do that as a specialty, and Dr. Porter does that as a specialty. So the brain being so vulnerable in utero makes people, kids, much more vulnerable to neurological influences. ADHD, impulse control are the kinds of behavioral things that might be likely sequelae for a child. Certainly, there are problems with bladder and GI issues oftentimes, or vision, as we know. And that tends to happen all too often.
If there, sorry, if
Okay.
there's families on the mainland, are they able to access Dr. Porter? Or is there an ability to get referrals for that testing or
On the
access
Yeah.
here?
continent.
Oh, absolutely. He's not, sometimes getting into insurance panels is awkward. So I happen to be in TRICARE West, which is rare because they've gone through so many changes. So we can collaborate and bill through TRICARE West. We have a sliding scale that nobody from Red Hill has ever had to pay a copayment.
Nice.
I can't say that I always write off copayments because that might be illegal too. But we don't, we have such a sliding scale, and it's so expensive in Hawaii, nobody pays a copayment. But yes, and yes, he's in, so he has a kind of license that allows him to work pretty much in any state that he wants to. I can work in several states. I've got enough work, more than I can handle right now.
Maybe the best course of action is for Jamie and Dr. Doors to follow up offline in terms of finding the right referrals, just because I'm noting the time, we stay on schedule. All right, Tara, would you have a question? Okay.
Yes, and I'll say it really quick. It's not a question, it's a comment. Hey, Alani, you asked what should we be asking for? And I know you asked Bob, but it's really important that we acknowledge something and ask for it to be expanded. And that is thank you for the Red Hill Clinic. Thank you for expanding it to the Red Hill community at whole, regardless of DoD affiliation. Thank you for expanding even that, because that was allowed through the secretarial designation, but they expanded that even further to allow people everywhere, no matter where Red Hill community members are. That secretarial designation allows you to continue being seen by military doctors anywhere. But what we need is for that to be expanded one more time to allow the community to see any medical provider, not just military, because of two reasons. One being that this creates and stirs up anxiety, maybe PTSD, because there are trust issues still. Maybe not everybody in the community has those trust issues, but we have to understand that that does exist with this community. And I'm sure that Bob can attest to that. But secondly, it creates insane logistical issues, because one person might have to drive several hours to get to a military facility to see those doctors, only to learn that that facility doesn't actually have the capability to do what it is that you need done. So they send you to a different one that's another 6 or 7 hour drive. If you go that far, you might need hotel accommodation. None of this is covered with that secretarial designation. The travel, the accommodations, the food and incidentals, that's not covered. Only seeing the doctor is. So it's still maintaining a certain barrier as far as access to care.
Thank you for
That's all
noting
I
that,
gotta say on
Tara. Okay, Michelle?
Yeah, on that note, on access to care, regarding approval for alternative treatments such as acupuncture, which is known to reduce inflammation for military service members. I know some service members are able to obtain treatments in those modalities for other injuries. Would active duty service members and their families be able to, through TRICARE, be able to access those kinds of protocols as well? Would be nice, I think.
Yeah, I think TRICARE does not allow for any kinds of complementary support. I don't know who your advocate is, but that would be a trick to have an advocate for the Red Hills people designated, someone whose heart was really in it. Like, I don't want to get him in trouble, but Dr. O's heart was really in it to get the right information for this group. He had big shoes to fill. I don't know what his predecessor is, who took his place is like. So who's the new Dr. O, and what's he doing
Do
for
we
you
know?
people?
I don't know. Do we know who new Dr. O is?
Who doesn't that say a lot all by itself?
That's notable. Yeah. Okay, so that's two very.
Elima had her hand up, or
Oh.
Elima, did you want to ask a question?
Actually, I was gonna ask a question, but I wanna allow you to move forward, and I think I'll speak with Dr. Doors offline because it has to do with who else is being investigated. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I
look
think
forward to
this
speaking with you.
might be a good time to pivot to the update about the Red Hill Registry opening. Tara, are you ready to do that? Okay, and then we can open it, we'll take a few minutes to do that, and then we can open it up for public testimony, and people might still have questions for you.
Thanks.
Right.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we'll post your contact information.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I put his contact information in the Zoom chat, just to scroll up a little bit. I put his name and his phone number that he said and his email that he said. So if anybody is on Zoom, you can grab that. If not, then
We'll post it to the
CRI.
CRI website. Yeah, we'll post it to the CRI website. No worries. Okay,
Thank you.
cool, thank you.
So the Red Hill Registry, everybody in here may know that I am the Director of Community Engagement. So I am engaging all of you to make sure that everyone knows that we are launching finally and almost ready to accept actual enrollment. And yes, what I would like to ask is for everybody to mark their calendars to save the date for August 2nd. We're going to have a family fair, something just very big. We're inviting a lot of different people to have tables and engage with families and children in all sorts of ways. There will be some very exciting things. As we're in the process of confirming who those are, I can't say too much, but I can definitely say it'll be fun, educational, and fun.
Do you have a time
August
frame?
2nd, I think it's like 10 to 2.
Do you know where yet?
I know this is recorded, but don't quote me on that. And yes, it's at the Moanalua High School.
Oh, yay.
In their cafeteria and then the courtyard right out front of it.
Excellent, thank you. Way to launch. What? Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that came out in the discussion last night, which was I thought was an excellent discussion regarding how the Red Hill spill has affected the health of families that were on that water line. One of the things that came up was how to reach out to Kanaka Maoli and to Pacific Island peoples, Micronesians, and, you know, are you folks, as the Red Hill Registry, are you guys going to be putting out your information in different languages? You know, that's I guess, my question.
Yes. If you ask me what those languages are, I don't know, because although I am community engagement, we have a director of marketing and communications. And so that is definitely something that's more in his wheelhouse and what he's producing. So if there's one or any that you have specifically that you would like is covered, that may not be obvious, then definitely just let me know and I can pass that along.
Cool, thank you very much. Okay, any other questions about the Red Hill Registry?
Say one more thing. I just would encourage the Red Hill Registry. I totally 100% support the registry. I want to encourage you folks to really reach out to the Pacific Island community and to the Native Hawaiian community because that's where you're going to see the disparity. That's where you're going to see, you know, the real big difference between those who have access to care versus those who don't. And even the ones that do have access to care, I mean, it's not even enough, but those are the people that's going to be invisible in this whole thing. And if, there's a way to strategize getting them on that registry and, getting them, hopefully some help, so they don't have to deal, I mean, definitely from what the doctor here says is that there are ways you can address people's symptoms and conditions who have been poisoned by from different toxins, so, and I think that's going to be important. But thank you for your work, Tara.
Thank you for that. And that is something we're putting together our lists right now for emailing, save the dates. If you are open to it, I would love to just like have coffee and strategize so that that's something that I can implement into what I'm doing and making sure I'm covering grounds that you may know and I may not know.
Sure. Thank you, Tara.
Great. Okay, if there's no other conversations, we can open it up for public testimony. I don't know if I can't see the chat, so if anybody has indicated their interest in saying something now. Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
I did want to mention, I did see Jamie made a comment earlier when we were talking about the discussion that we had last night with the national academies, that it will be sent to Congress after it is completed in February of 2026.
Well, that dovetails nicely with our expectation that there should be a congressional hearing. Yeah, especially if there's criminal investigation going on. There's the next season on Red Hill Survivors is going to be amazing. I'm so excited. Okay, go ahead, Jamie. Sorry, Jamie's still muted.
No,
Okay,
I
there we go,
was
thanks.
gonna reiterate what Tara brought up with NASM and what Michelle just brought up with NASM and the importance. People can still give their information to NASM, and they have their website. A lot of us community representatives have posted it, but also it coincides with the registry and the fact that NASM will be giving their information and their results or their findings and recommendations to Congress. The secretarial designation letter will be up about a month after that happens. We need that secretarial designation letter to continue. One of the main ways to get it to continue is to have families actually use it, but families are afraid to use it. And honestly, we're 3 months in and a lot of information hasn't been put out. I have been using it, and there's a lot of hiccups. There's difficulty getting on base, and then the travel costs and everything else, as Tara said, there's a lot of hiccups, but we do need that to continue. So the best way for that to continue is for our families to speak up, whether with NASM, whether with the Red Hill Registry, or whether activating the designation letter for themselves. I know Kat is working on it, Kat McCallahan, I'm working on it or using it, and others as well, where people will help walk you through it or help you get there. But we need to also, as a community, call for that to be pushed and expanded. Because as Dr. DeWar said, that families are going to be affected for a long time, and not everybody's going to make the golden 20 years in order to keep their health insurance. Sorry, my breathing. And the families affected need to be thinking of that now.
Good point, Jamie. Thank you. Meredith?
Hey, good evening. Aloha, everybody. Can you hear me fine?
Yes. Aloha, Meredith.
Awesome. Just to follow up on a lot of the speaking of epidemiological studies, I do want to remind, and maybe I need to fully understand, but just to remind that the NASM is a consensus study. It is not a toxicological or epidemiological study. There is nothing so far being done is on an epidemiological level that's official. The DOORS registry for DoD affiliated people, and then the Red Hill registry are wonderful, wonderful things to help us build this all up, but we definitely need epidemiological study done. And that's not something that's going to start tomorrow, even if it gets approved today. It gets done by Congress. So I do want to remind you that there are two sister bills that existed as of June of 2023, and they've been introduced in both the House and Senate, but nothing has been done since then. They both have the Secretary of Health and Human Services being requested to start an epidemiological study. So if you want to mark down HR 4061, that was introduced by Ed Case and Jill Takuda. And then Senate Bill 2183, introduced by Brian Schatz, Jerry Moran, and Mazie Hirono back in 2023. All of those are about Red Hill health impacts. And I think that it would go a long way if we all remind them that it's still out there and available. And even though it may need to be tweaked a bit, could be a really nice basis for us. Just two other quick items. Has anybody, I guess you can answer me because I know we can't get answers when we talk as a full CRI, but does anybody know if there'd been any kind of lease acknowledgement, like when people move into like base housing or to Capilina? I mean, they just said, we're working on it. We're working on it. I would like to see it. I want a PDF. I want to look at it with my own eyes.
Yeah, so Meredith, to answer that question, the Navy said at their last meeting that, oh yeah, we got that lease thing taken care of, no worries. And we asked to see it and we haven't seen it yet. And we can renew that request. And then also, we saw that the Navy has posted a residence resource guide, I think is what it's called. And it's, it's not a thin document. It's a brochure, a pamphlet. Oh, there, Mai's holding it up. Yeah, thank you. So beautiful. So it's not skinny. I mean, the previous resource guide, I think, was like 2 pages. So at least it's longer. I'm still reading it. I don't know if Mai, if you have opinions you want to share about it. It really frustrated me just a little that I've read so far, where they spent a lot of time talking about how there are so many sources of contamination. It's not just this poison you drank in your kitchen. It's wild. Go ahead, Mai.
No, that's all I was going to say is you can get total petrohydrocarbons from your toothbrush and your paint. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice.
Yeah, PFAS is in everything.
It's not very accurate, I think.
Okay.
It's getting away from the truth.
It's getting away from it, yeah. Yeah, so I guess that was just the little that we have in terms of what's being communicated to residents that we know of. But yeah, we'll totally continue to harp on that in future meetings.
I remember that guide very well, and having some opinions too. I mean, it's obviously better than nothing, but way room for improvement. I didn't know if that's still being handed out or if that was just to appease the people that were still there, right? So it's years later, and the transience of the community is really high. And sorry, the last item is this problem set has been appropriated $2 billion. And that is hard to keep track of as public folk. So I don't know if there's a way at the next meeting or anything like that, but I just, there's the subcontractors that have worked at the Red Hill facility have been a problem before. So how can we trust that the cleanup and the remediation and the safe drinking water moving forward is going to be handled with better standards? So I'd love to see literally a website. I mean, keep adding the dashboards. We'll take all the dashboards we can. I'd love to put that in as a request, but thank you guys for still showing up and doing what you're doing. I know I can't be there in person, but I'm so happy that the folks showed up last night to the sessions. That is so important for your stories to be heard. Mahalo. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Meredith, for sticking with us too. So we did request for the July 31st meeting with the Navy. We requested an agenda item to be a breakdown of the $2 billion. The sources, how it was spent, what's left, all of that. We'll see if they agree to that or not. Okay, so I see Elima and then Patty. Rosalie, can you see that? Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Sorry about that. My answer are what I'm assuming. So still cooling down. I wanted to thank Dr. Doers for his presentation. That's really important information. And I think we definitely want to follow up on that. I also wanted to acknowledge all the work that Tara's been doing with the Red Hill Registry. So mahalo for that. And it's definitely a great opening at Moanalua. Meredith, so thank you for sharing that information with us and the bills. Because it sounds like even though we have not been able to get a lot of interest from our CODEL, at least they have seemingly done something. They've submitted some paperwork and produced some bills, but I don't know if they're doing enough to lobby for it. And what my concern is has a lot to do with what Dr. Dwars mentioned with regard to me, malfeasance on the part of the Navy, intentionally trying to mislead people, because this goes along with that doggone Safe Waters website that Jamie Marincola from EPA says, yeah, it's wrong for them to use Safe Waters as part of their website, and they know that it's like the cigarette companies are having, had to disclose. I mean, come on now, at a certain point, it's just absolutely ridiculous for people to continue to be gaslighted. And I think that goes a lot into what Dr. Doers is telling us about, is that after a while, people who are traumatized, there's a secondary, tertiary traumas because of all this other hoo-ha. So we definitely need to get to the bottom. And thank you, Meredith, for bringing that up. We definitely want to get on our CODEL. So mahalo to everyone.
Thank you, Lima. Patty?
Thanks, Marty. This is a heavy meeting. Thank you to Dr. Dwars for sharing all of his information. I want to go back to the Navy's conditional approval for reopening their shaft or shafts, but should I wait?
No,
Kind of
go ahead.
change? Okay. On Tuesday, we got reconfirmation from Ernie Lau that the Board of Water Supply does not have any say in the reopening of the shafts. So it's just really between the Navy and the Department of Health. So that raised a huge red flag. I think I've been kind of sleeping on this, but that really woke me up again. And so it boils down in my mind that the community is going to have to fight the reopening. No one else is going to, right? So that's a big concern, because I don't know how we can mobilize to build a campaign to keep these shafts closed. And the Navy claims that they need backup resources, right? So that's why they need to reopen these shafts. So I'd really like to start hearing from, military families. Have you guys experienced water shortages? Have you been asked to conserve water? Or have you done just fine with what you're given? Not quality, just I'm talking about quantities, because I don't believe the Navy. And I think we all know if these shafts get reopened, it's going to be a really dangerous thing, and it will expose way more than 93,000 people to possible toxicity, right? So I still want to know, how much does the Navy use on a daily basis for all of their facilities? And how does that compare to what the shafts are pumping out, or, that they get from it? But I don't know where to start on this, because I think it's a really big issue. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a really big issue. I agree, and I think we start with Kathy Ho and Department of Health, and just make sure that we wedge our way in there and get in there and make it our business, and then from there we can see what opportunities exist for us to try to influence whatever decisions government makes. So
Didn't you invite Kathy Ho to today's meeting?
I did invite Kathy Ho to today's meeting, but she felt that there was nothing on the agenda that warranted. We didn't have the reopening of the aquifers on this agenda, so but we should definitely invite her to an upcoming meeting and try to really drill down on the reopening. So
Yeah, and Patty, your concern is really important, because it's really valid, because the Board of Water Supply well that was shut down is actually between the Navy Red Hill and the Navy Halava well. So they're in close proximity to each other. Ernie Lau is here. I don't know if he wants to comment on that too. You know, if he has concerns. We do know he has concerns about the reopening of the well, but did you want to say anything about your thoughts? Has the Board of Water Supply sent a letter?
And while he's coming up, Tara, you have your hand is raised new? Okay, all right, and then Patty, your hand is raised new?
I just wanted to, was it Janice or was it Patty who started this point in the conversation?
Patty.
Okay, Patty, you asked about the military families and wanting to hear what, I should say we, because I'm a military spouse living on Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam. So as a resident for the last 6 years, I can tell you that we were asked to conserve water. Nothing was said about like any outages that would happen to ensure that there was water conservation. They stopped the sprinklers from watering the yards for a little while, but that didn't stop neighbors from watering their yards with their hose and sprinklers. And one of my neighbors kept watering my yard with the best of intentions, of course. She's like, we don't need these ugly yards. We need a beautiful yard. And, she's just trying to care for her home in her mind, but I was repeatedly like, do not water my yard. We're supposed to be conserving water. There is a water crisis, and so I guess what I should say is we were asked to conserve for a little while during the water contamination and immediately after, but there was definitely no monitoring or enforcing of that. Nobody sent a notice saying you're over your modified limit. Nothing like that.
Thank you, Tara.
Oh,
Uncle Ernie?
okay, thank you. Thank you for the question, Leilani. Yes, in terms of reactivation, the Navy's proposed reactivation of Aya Halava Shaft, we did send a letter to I think it was to the Department of Health and regarding the activation of that, because we don't control the Navy, but the decision is with the Department of Health to approve the reactivation. We expressed strong concern simply because when you look at Aya Halava Shaft in relationship to Red Hill Shaft and the Red Hill fuel tanks, Aya Halava Shaft is actually across the valley from the Red Hill Shaft and the Red Hill fuel tanks on the Aya side of the valley. So our concern was, given the large amount of uncertainty related to how the contamination is spreading, how it's moving, we thought it's safer not to reactivate. I do understand the Navy's need to try to get more redundancy of water sources. They're depending on one right now. But for Aya Halava, we had strong concerns about reactivation, simply because of the large amount of unknowns and how contamination is moving.
Can I ask you a question, Ernie? So do you have concerns about the Red Hill Shaft too as well? And did you communicate that to the Department of Health or to any other regulatory agency? And then also, have you shared your opinion about your concerns about the reopening of the wells with our elected leaders as well? Have you had conversations with them on that?
Related to Red Hill Shaft, we haven't made a similar kind of letter on Red Hill Shaft, because simply Red Hill Shaft is on the same side of the valley as the Red Hill fuel tanks. Although, I know they are pumping it to try to capture contamination. I don't know how effective that has been, and they're dumping water into Halava Stream. We have not expressed our concern about Aya Halava Shaft reactivation. I'll just tell you very truthfully about that concern to our elected officials. I don't think we copied the elected officials on that letter. Joyce is in the audience here. Joyce, I didn't think we CC'd the elected officials, but that's a very good point.
we can go out and now give them a copy of that letter to let them know we're concerned.
Thank you very much. Do you have any updates on the red dye tracer study? Speaking of not knowing the fate of the contaminants.
So, you know, I want to be careful not to speak on behalf of the department.
just if they have told you.
The UH, but it looks like they may have detected low levels in Red Hill Shaft, maybe in the April timeframe. So they released it in February, and maybe in April, they might have started to see some low levels.
Oh, they haven't reported out any finding. I was hoping to make a joke about how they lost the dye. Shucks. So they haven't reported any of the, I mean, as far as I know, there hasn't been
But they
an
haven't
announcement.
made their formal reports
Right,
yet.
right,
So
okay.
at some point, maybe you might want to ask, invite them to come to give you an update on the dye tracer study.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. I do want to make an announcement
Yes,
too,
please.
since I'm here.
Yes.
There is going to be a special meeting of the Board of Water Supply next week, Monday at 2:00 at the board, in the boardroom at the Board of Water Supply. You can also attend virtually. The board is going to take up an executive session, matters pertaining, concerning the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility, and to request confirmation and approval of the manager's authority to take any action necessary to protect against, mitigate, and/or recover any damages related to the actual or threatened releases of contaminants to water resources from the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility, including the filing and prosecution of a complaint in federal district court against the Navy. So I don't know, we'll have to see how the board goes on the decision on this matter. But after they come out of executive session, there'll be an open session and take a vote, and it'll be public at that point.
Are you thinking executive session would be like a half an hour, an hour?
I don't know.
It's hard to say. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. We'll make a point of watching.
Can I say something to Ernie? Ernie, who would have thought that managing water would have been so political?
Well, what is the saying? Whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over?
Yeah.
Uncle Ernie's there with the best of them, man. He's been beefing over water for a long time.
And I've got the lumps and scars to prove it too. Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much for all that you're doing on behalf of our water supply.
Mahalo.
Oh, testimony.
We
thank you.
welcome testimony too in the open session.
Okay.
Even though it's an executive session, there is going to be a component of open session where we'll ask for testimony if anybody wants to submit testimony in writing, appear in person, do it virtually. You have to go on and sign up to do it virtually. So register at our website on our notice to register to be a testifier.
And the public testimony will be after the executive session or before?
I think we'll ask for testimony even before.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you could testify before or after?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Patty, I see that your hand is up.
Ernie, thank you. I have a question for you. Can you summarize what kinds of testing results the Board of Water Supply is getting for Halava Shaft and whatever else you guys test and what
Okay.
you're finding?
I can try to summarize. There's a lot of data. So Halava Shaft now, we're consistently picking up detections of PFAS, especially I think it's PFOS at Halava Shaft. Our Halava wells were also have for a while detected PFAS at that location. IA wells, we had that detection of PAH the other year, but not detecting any PFAS there. Our Kaumila wells, we are detecting PFAS there. It's just further to the west. Patty, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I was taking notes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did have one comment that was texted to me from someone who's watching the feed right now, and I just wanted to share their concerns. So it says, in regards to the Navy's closure plan, the Navy stated that the closure in place option keeps open the opportunity for non-fuel reuse of the tanks. This is unacceptable. They said, I quote, I want to emphasize that any decision to reuse is separate from the closure itself, close quote. And so this person is saying, I can imagine this will be outside the scope, the question of reuse will be outside the scope of the Navy Closure Task Force, what they can discuss in future CRI meetings. What does non-fuel reuse mean? And how do we, as a community, keep this front of mind? So that's a good point. We need to figure out how this decision about the tanks being reused is going to be made and figure out how we can influence it. Thank you.
And I want to point out that when we were first formed back in 2023, that we were informed by the Navy that we would have a say on what the future use of those tanks would be. And now they're kind of reneging on that, but we have it on film.
Yeah,
So
that was Admiral Wade, October 2023. I asked him a direct question. He was like, yes, ma'am, don't you worry, ma'am. I mean, how many
we're
times they've done
supposed to
that?
have a say as the Red Hill CRI.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments, questions, conversation? We may be done early. A historic meeting in the history of CRI meetings. Oh, yes, Suzanne. Yeah, please come up. Yeah.
Susan. Hi, I didn't see you.
I've been in lots of pain.
Oh,
Aloha.
aloha.
As I was watching this at home on Olelo, I couldn't stand it because I wasn't able to say anything. So grabbed my granddaughter, she's in the car, sped down here, no accidents. And I just wanted to really appreciate what I heard from you. And
The doctor she's pointing to.
I see Jamie nodding, and it's one of the best news that I've heard in such a long time for children, for active duty members, for parents, teachers, everybody that was out there drinking the water, Pearl City Peninsula, your area, which my brain is not working because I'm in pain. What is your area?
Capilina Beach
Capilina,
House.
which was totally ignored for a long time. And even though we're getting good information, it still broke my heart to hear that it took this long to find somebody that would validate, first of all, it wasn't in their brains. Their brains was being messed up by the contamination, which if you ask Jamie, she knows that's what happened to her brain. And I can use that because she's talked about it before, so I'm not disclosing anything. The children, you know, after the court case, and we all had to accept the results of the court case. And then here we have somebody right now, and I don't know if we can influence an appeal or anything like that. My problem is that people got robbed. They got screwed, they got robbed, we got gaslighted, we got screwed, we got lied to the point of, I don't even know how we got here. Except for that, we had people supposedly helping, and I'm going to say the Department of Health, number one, with a letter on December 8th going out from, who remembers her name? Jamie.
Kathy, the lady. The blonde lady. Yeah,
Yeah,
Brain fog, I don't remember.
What's her name?
Remember her name?
She-
If Mandy was here, she would.
Yeah, Mandy would remember.
Jamie
names.
knows, she's just not saying anything.
We'll put it in the chat. It'll
Mandy
come.
or Stephanie, maybe?
Belton.
Yes, Diane
Oh, yeah.
came out
Diane
and
Felton.
sent a letter to every provider on the island,
Medical provider.
not only military providers, but every doctor, physician, provider on the island, saying that there were no tests for any of this. And that's where the beginning started of the military saying, we can't help you. And then it got to, we'll create a clinic. And then the clinic, nobody wanted to go to because of all the lying that was going on. Then we just kind of floated through this island of water of nobody being able to trust, which is where we're still at, I can tell you that. But we do have, and I'll tell you what, Diane Felton should be criminally charged herself for doing what she did, because that was the beginning of you guys not being able to be helped. It's a crime. Is the DOH complicit? Yes. They allowed her to make that statement. They never rescinded it, no matter how much evidence they had. I know I'm talking because I'm angry, but I'm upset also. And I don't think we should tolerate any more of this. And if we have to go somewhere to start talking about the fourth supplement, which isn't going to be released until July, and not having any input, and yet the DOH may approve it before we even get to see it. That's a problem. And I don't know where to start. I don't know if we can go to our congressional leaders, because all they're into is what's happening in DC. But we have to figure out something, and I do think that if we together put our heads together, that we can figure out how we're going to be able to get action, not just the CRI saying, we want this on our agenda, and then they blow us off, which is what Kathleen did, because there was stuff on the agenda that she could have been here for. That was another thing. I'm so mad because you know when you're lied to, and you're lied to, and you're lied to.
Yeah.
And it just, you don't have anything you can hit. You just have to kind of take it in and say, what's the next step? And I want to know what's the next step. I mean, I'm going to put my thinking cap on, but I don't know when the next meeting is with the CRI and the Navy.
July 31st.
Pardon me?
July 31st.
Okay, well, there has to be a way that this gets on the agenda. I don't know how,
Okay, we can request it.
but yeah, that's the problem. We have to request it.
It's totally,
okay?
yeah.
So the way you word the request, I don't know. It's going to make a difference with whether they'll actually put it on there. But you know, I've remained Switzerland in the most part. For the most part, I've been focused on the data as much as I can to stay in that lane. And I think I've come out of that now. It's kind of like, I can't trust anything. Now, if I'm saying I can't trust anything anymore, then it's really bad because of the data. Now we can't trust anything. Based on your presentation today, Doctor. And I was compelled to drive from Waipio all the way down here just to talk.
Yeah.
And if I get any feedback,
Thank you very
I'll
much.
be
for
there,
joining us.
Ernie. I promise you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for hearing
Yeah,
me.
take care.
My best to you, ma'am.
Uncle Ernie, we have one more question for you, if you don't mind. Sorry to put you on the spot. The question is, if the Board of Water Supply wanted all of us to conserve water, what would you do to us to make it happen? How would you force us to save water? What are your options?
If we are in a water shortage condition, then, you know, we can, with the support of the board, a decision of the board, and done very publicly, implement restrictions on water use.
So what does that look
But,
like?
but our approach is actually to ask for voluntary conservation. And and not only just asking, but to try to expand our rebate program to provide incentives. So rather than using only the stick and say you have to save water, we want to provide an incentive for people to replace inefficient high water using toilets. $100 rebate to do that. Encouraging people to take shorter showers, know when it's a good time to irrigate, not in the middle of the day when most of that water is going to evaporate out, but during the mornings or the evenings. So we're looking at even more ways to encourage people to save water.
Okay, so the Board of Water, you with the board makes a decision about whether there's a water shortage situation where we need to start conserving.
It's actually driven by how much our pumps are working to keep up with the demand for water from people, businesses, government.
Okay.
If the pumps are working really hard and have to operate like 20 hours a day or nearly 24 hours a day, and we're still just barely keeping up, that's when we're going to have to look at mandatory restrictions to cut back water use. We're not there yet. We continue to monitor the systems like the Honolulu water system and also the Aiea system very closely to see how we're doing. So it's been challenging, but we see our customers as our partners in helping to save water, and we want to work together.
Thank you very much. I'm speculating, but I think the basis for this question was to try to see if there were some tools that Board of Water Supply has for conserving water that we may be able to ask the Navy to employ on their side.
We'd be glad to share with them. A lot of the information on our Water Sensible program is on our website.
Okay.
So, we'd be glad to sit down with the Navy if they want to hear and learn what we're doing. We've made really good progress, or starting to make really good progress with these large condominiums and working with the property managers that manage these properties and also the associations because they don't get a water bill. But the average homeowner gets a water bill. The apartment owner only sees it in their maintenance, common area maintenance fees.
I see.
But if we could work with the property manager and the association to look at ways to save water and save money, reduce their costs.
Right on. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right. Well, any closing thoughts from anyone online or in person?
Well, I just wanted to share one thing that came up in our discussion last night at the MESA meeting that really I can't stop thinking about. But according to the Stafford Act, what happened at Red Hill in November of 2021 could have been declared an emergency. That would have given us access to millions of dollars in FEMA monies and to be able to address, like right off the bat, all of these concerns the families, are having, and would have really raised that level. And that to me was very troubling because, we see what happened with Lahaina, and when that is declared an emergency, a national emergency, then they got a lot of help. But of course, some of it was problematic. But yeah, they got frontline help, and I think that's a question I want answered, in the future. But what was apparently there was some kind of because there was a person that was part of the emergency that committee that makes that makes the recommendation to make the determination. But she was saying that there was not there needs to be a baseline number, and I said, well, is it number of people? She was like, no, number in terms of money, the damage that was done. So what was the baseline damage done in terms of money? And so I think that's something it's like crept in my head, and I just can't stop thinking about it because it seems like, yes, great, we have the registry, yes, we have the VI bill, and it's not perfect. We have the Red Hill Clinic from what I heard last night, only 200 people were served. And I can't, and that's what I heard, but please don't take that as fact. I still have to fact check that. And so there's all of these problems. Everything came so slow, too late, and we have families that are still suffering. So, and that's just one of my thoughts, but Susan, I see you up here.
Yes, the emergency order. Jamie knows we've had long talks about this. Declaring an emergency in the state is from the governor. We saw how much fast action he got from Biden to Lahaina, but he was not being influenced by the military hierarchy on the island. And that's what stopped the ability for the emergency to be declared on Red Hill, because there was so much influence lying from the Navy, minimizing what happened, regardless of the monetary, which you're right, there's a monetary that they look at, but it's not the only part of when they make the decision to call for, declare an emergency. So there is one part, because you can basically say, well, how many houses were burned and things like that. But they did add in the human factor, and this is what was blocked. So being able to prove that,
Yeah.
you'd have to get the governor to, be put on a lie detector test, but.
Thank you, Susan. We're not going to subject Governor to that. Okay, Elima, you have your hand up?
Thank you for that.
Yes, I wanted to thank Ernie for sharing that update with us, and also sharing the letter, because I do think it's important now for us to be able to stay on top of Department of Health and any other entities that are, I guess, our local water regulators. In the meantime, I like the idea of the Board of Water Supply working directly with the Navy and any other community entities to help reduce water use. When I heard that they're watering their lawns, or I don't know, somebody's watering the lawns, like, who's watering lawns and for what? We have rain, every day it rains. Like, I don't even understand the whole idea behind watering a lawn. And if water is that important, we definitely can't afford to do that right now too, right? So I don't want to belabor it, but I do want to make sure that we figure out some methods of promoting, maybe not water conservation, because I know that that's maybe a tricky word to use, but sensibility. And I do want the CRI to be incorporated into that. And I'm wondering if we can get our OPO to be kind of like our new kind of front people when it comes to that. We can learn from them. So, mahalo.
Thank you very much for those thoughts, Elima. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the hour. I think we have talked as much as we can about these particular issues. The next meeting will be July 31st with the Navy. And we will share out the agenda once it gets, the Navy gets to decide what we get to talk about. That's the terms of the new arrangement. And so we'll see what it is they want to talk about. And we also asked for them to pick a different location. The Hokulani Community Center just wasn't a good enough fit. Yeah. So stay tuned. Please sign up on our website for our email listserv so that you can receive the agendas when they go out. And I can also follow us on Instagram. All right. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Olelo.
Thank you, Olelo.
I don't know if you were listening to the last meeting.
I need the cameras.
Presented something and there was a